I'm a foster parent licensed through Montgomery County.
Awesome. So we talked before, and you were telling me how you've been fostering for 9 years. Is that correct?
Yes, it'll be 9 years this spring.
That's that's a long time. So since you've been doing this for so long, could you tell me about how you originally got into fostering?
Yeah, so my husband and I signed up with the Montgomery County for a course where you learn all of the things that you need to be a foster parent. And we went through the training, and at the end of it, we decided to go ahead and put our names in to be foster parents for children who need it.
Nice. Could you explain the process of becoming a foster parent?
Yeah, so first you attend an information session, and they tell you a little bit about the children in need, about your role as a foster parent and what you can do to help them, and then kind of the role that foster parents play in the wider community of helping families in need. So you take that, and then you take a series of courses where you find out how you work with children who have trauma, who have special needs, how the court system works. They give you a background on how you will be assisting the child and how you will be helping the families who are looking to reunify with their children. And so you go through that course. My husband and I did it on double time because we were just really interested in getting it done. So instead of taking one class a week, we took 2 classes a week. And we were approved in the spring to be foster parents. They do a check of your house. So they go through, they make sure you have smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, all of that. And when you pass your home study, then you are set to bring a child into your home. And it was a month or 2 before we got our first placement.
Okay, nice. So a month or 2 after you got licensed, you got your first placement. What was getting that first phone call like?
So it was really confusing because I was at work and I got a phone call saying, we have a kid, we want to bring him over. And we were like, great. And so I left work early and I came home and I made, my husband and I are like straightening everything up because now we know what the sex of the child is going to be, what the age of the child is going to be. So they want to make sure that you have lots of stuff in your house for whatever child might be dropped off. So we made sure everything was age appropriate, toys were age appropriate. And then no one showed up. And we were like, oh, I guess they didn't need us anymore. And so that was a Friday, and we went through a Saturday, and we went through a Sunday and didn't hear anything. We thought, oh, well, maybe they found another placement for that child. Monday, I was at work. They gave me a phone call. We'll be there in a half an hour. So again, my husband and I got off work. We came home, and we were here to meet our first placement. So yeah, it was a young child and somebody who had been through some other households and, was obviously a little scared about the experience, as a child would be who's meeting 2 big strangers for the first time. When a child comes into your house, there are a lot of things you have to do. So you do a clothing inventory where you have to count every single thing that the child comes in with. You have to learn about their medicines and their doctors and everything like that. And then the person leaves, you feed them supper, they go to sleep. They sleep really well through the night. They wake up the next morning. They say, I can't remember your names. Can you tell me what your names are again, please? So we told the child our names again. And then the child did not sleep again for about a year and a half. So because when you're really stressed out, sometimes your body just shuts down and you need sleep, right? So that first night, I think that's what happened. And then there was just so much trauma that the child was not used to sleeping, not used to sleeping in a bed, and just really didn't sleep for a year and a half. I remember after a year and a half, the first night the child slept, my husband was working late and I called him and I'm like, you will not believe it. That child is asleep. It is 9:00 at night and they're actually asleep. So that was pretty amazing. When you're a foster parent, you have all these like little milestones. Then some of them are the same as if you would have had biological children, but a lot of them are unexpected. So like the first night a child actually gets to sleep on their own is a super big thing for a foster kid. And so we got to, experience that and celebrate it with them.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's so good. It's so nice, like, you can can still celebrate those little milestones and the little things that keep going.
Yep.
It's really nice. So I know you have 2 children now, and those that you've adopted, and they're a little bit older and everything. So, but then this child you're talking about was younger. So what ages do you foster and why?
Yeah, so when you become a foster parent, you fill out this sheet, and it's a criteria sheet, and it basically says, these are the kind of children who I think I am capable of being a good parent for. So one of the things that you list are their ages. My husband and I are approved for children ages 4 and up, so 4 to 18. There are a lot of foster parents out there who want babies, so I figured I'd let them have the babies. We can have the older kids. And that first placement we got was 8 years old, and every child we've had since then has been older. So there's a great need for foster families for older children. Usually older children end up in group homes, which really isn't a way for them to learn how to live in a family setting. And so we have tried to be a household for children who have needs that aren't typically met by the foster parent pool that we have today.
So could you tell me more about like when you first get a child and they come into your home, what is it like from your perspective?
So it's a little scary because you don't know what you're getting into, and you don't know, there's always that thing about, can I meet the needs of this child? Because you don't know what needs they have when they come to your house. And even though you can ask questions before the child comes to your house, sometimes they don't know. So if a child has just been removed from their household where they were living, the agency might not know anything about them. They don't know if they are reading at school level. They don't even know if they've been to school. They don't know if they're healthy. They don't know if they have special needs, physical needs, mental needs. They don't know anything. So really, when a child comes to your home, it's up to you as foster parents to figure some of that stuff out. So it is a little scary. Am I going to be able to help this child? Because you really don't want to have to send a child back and say, you're going to have to find another family that can meet this child's needs better, because it's another disruption and it's another trauma, and we're trying to reduce the number of traumas that they have in their life. So I know with that first placement, it was a lot of, what do you like to watch on television? What kind of games do you like to play? What's your favorite color? What do you like to do? Have you been on a hike? Let's go on a hike. Let's see if you like hiking. Do you like dogs? We have a dog. Let's introduce you to the dog and see how that goes. It's a lot of, sitting down and reading with them as you would with any child, and trying to get an idea of, do they know the words? Do they not know the words? It is a lot of excitement because you get to do things with them for the first time. So for several of our placements, we got to take them trick-or-treating for the first time, which was super awesome. I didn't realize that they had never trick-or-treated before. So when we started talking about costumes, we could see that that was a really big deal for them. And then they got to experience it, and we got to experience with them. So, when they're the first day, week, month, even year that they're with you, you're really finding out about them as human beings. And you're also finding out more information about the trauma that they went through, and about their background, and about what your household can do to help them, and also what you can tell the agency, so the agency is prepared to best help them as well.
So when you first get a child in your home, you've talked a lot about like those little milestones and doing things with them for the first time. How do you approach a child and try to comfort them when they first enter your home, and trying to get to those like milestones?
Mm-hmm. So if you can, it's always nice to have a meal that they'll want to eat, that they'll like to eat when that first night that they're with you. So if you can get information, if not, you just think about like, what does a typical 8-year-old eat? Chicken nuggets, right? So you get chicken nuggets, and you get a little broccoli, and you have a little pasta, and what do you like to drink? We got juice, we got milk, you get a little bit of everything, and you see what they like. And a lot of it is just kind of letting them talk. So, especially children who have been neglected, they really haven't had adults in their lives who have listened to them. So, giving them lots of empty spaces in the conversation to say what they need to say. That was especially helpful with a couple sisters who we had in our household who, just were not very forthcoming. They were very good at doing what you asked, nodding their head yes. But we just tried to really give them the space to start to have their voice. We also have a game that we always play in the house with the kids when they first arrive, and then really the whole time they're here. I don't know if you've played Apples to Apples. Yeah. So the cool thing about Apples to Apples is everyone wins, right? Because it's that kind of game. And you get to learn, like, is this the kind of kid who always likes the funny answers? Or is this the kind of kid who always likes the serious answers? So, like, if you have a card that says red, do they want you to give them an apple, right? Or do they want you to give them something that is silly? And so we always play Apples to Apples. And even today, when some of our former foster children come over for dinner and we play a game after dinner, we ask them, what game do you want to play? We got 100 games in this house. They usually ask for either Apples to Apples or a 1970s version of Payday, where a prom dress costs $25.
Jeez, miss those days.
I know. It wasn't even that when I was a kid.
Wow. So you're still in touch with some of your former foster?
Yeah, we are.
That's so nice. What is that relationship like that you have with them?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the family who they end up living with. So, when you are given the opportunity to develop a good relationship with the relatives or the parents who they are going back to live with, it really helps you to be able to, can I have the kid's phone number? Is it okay if I text them? Calling the aunt and uncle and saying, how are they doing in school? Do you need anything? Can they come over for supper? Sometimes they go back to families that really don't want a lot of contact with us. So we understand that. We tell the kids, you're always welcome to reach out to us. And since they're older, the kids who are living with us are older, they can memorize a phone number. They can remember where you live. So as they get older, have the opportunity to reach back out to you if they want to. And so we've had that with the children who've lived with us. Either they've been really good about keeping in touch with us when we haven't been in a position to reach out, or we reach out to them on a daily basis. So I mentioned some sisters who lived with us. They moved in with some relatives in our school district, so they're very close. We get to see them a lot. We text back and forth frequently, and it's really nice to see how they're continuing to grow in their new household.
Nice.
Yep.
So awesome. You have this great relationship, it seems like, with the children that you foster and the ones that come into your home. And I think there's like a big fear other people have that stops them from wanting to be a foster parent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What would you say to them, like, to encourage them?
Yeah, so I think everyone should be a foster parent. It is hard work, but it's not impossible. You don't need to be perfect to be a foster parent. You don't need to have a typical lifestyle, a typical work schedule. If you've got space in your life, you can probably fit a child in. The children will often act in a way that you do not expect them to. And it's often because they're dealing with trauma and they're working through that. And so it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we understand that a child isn't being bad. A child is acting out, and there's a reason they're acting out. And we can help them through that. I think everyone should be a foster parent because the society needs it. There are so many children who could really benefit from having some stability in their lives. Even if they end up going back to a situation that is not completely stable, they have had the opportunity to experience that in your household every child who comes into our house, one of the first things they do is they learn how to do their own laundry. Because I don't know how long they're going to be here, but they got to know how to have clean clothes. So every kid learns how to do laundry. They learn how to do those skills. Those are skills that they might not have had the opportunity to learn before, and now they're going back. Social skills. How do I lose at the game apples to apples, right? Without throwing a fit. How do I get along with kids on the playground if I have hardly ever been to school? Things like that. And I think that the hardest thing about being a foster parent is often the bureaucracy, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. Some of the stuff that the agency does or the courts do just seems really counterintuitive. But we, in a position of privilege, can help to navigate those for a child who has no chance of navigating it or even understanding it themselves. So everyone should be a foster parent because you have something to offer the child in terms of advocacy. That said, it's not easy being a foster parent. And so if you're going to become a foster parent, get a good support group. So sometimes that's your family, and sometimes that's like a wider community, a church group. We have several other foster parents who we've developed close relationships with through this process. And so, somebody calls us up and says, I need a bed. We got a bed. Somebody else calls us up and says, I got to take a kid to the hospital. Can somebody watch my kid while I go to the hospital? So there are opportunities to kind of grow outside of the bubble that we lived in before and get to meet a lot of different people. And in this world where everything is really polarized and people are getting really confined to their socioeconomic group in life, it also gives you a window into the lives of people who are struggling. And it makes you more empathetic, and it makes you more able to help the community, as opposed to just kind of, staying in your house, in your neighborhood, in the group that you currently are in. Because there are a lot of things in our community that we could solve together if we can just come together.
I know it's case-by-case situation with every single child, but one of I think it was your first child you mentioned was here for a year and a half?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
From my understanding, and some of the research that we've done, it's supposed to just be for a couple months, before they're reunified or something else happens or they move to a different home. So why do you think the time ranges differ for every child?
Yeah. So the first child was with us about 2 years, actually a little more than 2 years before we were able to adopt the child. So there is a state rule that children are supposed to be in foster care for 2 years, no more. Which generally means by 18 months, the agency should have a permanency plan in place. What happens is Ohio is a reunification state, so the agency is working toward reunification. So they're working with the parents or whatever family member the child was originally living with, and they're working through a case plan. So what does this person need to do to get custody of the child back? So this person should be, if they're having problems with mental health or drug addiction or health or housing, or utilities or any of those things, they should be following the plan and getting help in place so that they can then care for the child when the child comes back to them. So the parents are supposed to work on that plan for 18 months. And then depending on what that looks like, then the agency is supposed to come up with a permanency plan. Are we moving toward reunification? Are we going to find a family member? Are we going to find someone else that the child knows for the child to live with? Or does it look like that the child is going to need to come into the permanent custody of the state and then be adopted? And so I think often in the past, it's only at the 2-year mark that they start making those permanency plans. So children will tend to stay in the system longer. Maybe they're working toward reunification, and at 2 years something happened and it's not working out. So then they have to suddenly pivot and find a new plan. Sometimes kids just go from house to house to house. If they don't make a lot of progress on themselves, then it's hard to put a child who is acting out because of trauma back in a family situation where they're already struggling with some other things. So maybe the child and the adults are not compatible at 2 years in the situation that they are currently in. And they just stay, one of our children, the agency just wanted them to age out of the system. So 2 years really didn't matter. They figured they were just going to emancipate them when they turned 18, and then that would be kind of the end of it. And we fought to not have that outcome happen, because children who are just emancipated, who do not have any supports in the world, formal supports, legal supports, really struggle. So, I think it's a combination of the agency. Sometimes it's the courts. Sometimes the courts will say, yes, we're for reunification, but we need another 6 months. Okay, now we need another 6 months. Okay, now we need another 6 months. And kids will end up being in foster care 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, longer than that. So, yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah, it seems like it. What does that do to a child's identity and helping them find their place in this world and place and comfortability with themselves?
Yeah. So foster care is really hard on a child, like coming to a new place. Even kids who've come into our house and have been really successful, they will say things like, being a foster kid was really hard. Sometimes it's being hard because you're away from your family. Sometimes it's hard because you're branded as a foster kid, so maybe you look different than the family that you live with. You have a different last name than the family that you live with. You have to get permission to do anything from the agency if you're a foster kid. So you might struggle to play sports with your friends, or go on a Girl Scout overnight because you have got to get all these permissions, and sometimes you can't get the permissions in time. And so it's really hard for a child to grow into who they are when they don't have a stable space around them. I would say that both children who we've adopted, after adoption, you could kind of see an exhale, right? Like a relaxing, like okay, this is where I'm going to stay, which they didn't have the day before, because they've always been in such a state of flux that they never believed that it was going to happen until it actually finally happened. And the hope is that every child will be able to relax into a permanent place to live, whether that's reunification, adoption, kinship placement, whatever. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about having to go through the state for permission slips and everything.
Yeah.
How do you, as a foster parent and an advocate for these children, how do you make that work? I mean, it seems
yeah, you do the best you can. Once you have fostered the child for a while, you understand their caseworker better, so you understand that the timelines that caseworker is likely to need for some of this stuff. So when, for example, you want to take the child on vacation, you know that for this particular caseworker, I can get it to them today and I might have it on Friday. For another caseworker, I might need to give it to them a month in advance, and then when they don't give it to me, I'm going to need to reach out to their supervisor, and when their supervisor doesn't get back to me, I'm going to need to reach out to their manager. And so you kind of learn that through trial and error. There is a normalcy policy passed by the state of Ohio, I would say within the last 10 years, and it allows us to do some things. So like I could sign for a permission slip for the child to go to Carillon Park, which is a really big thing because you used to not be able to do that. I can say our child can go and stay with their best friend overnight without having that family need an FBI background check, which is what you used to need. So kids are able to do a little more normal things. There is a difference between how different people in the agency interpret the normalcy policy. So that can be difficult. So can I sign my kid up for soccer, or can I not sign up my kid up for soccer? Because when I sign my kid up for soccer, I have to sign something that says, if my kid gets hurt, I'm not going to sue you, right? Every sport has that. And the county won't allow that to be signed. So can I sign my kid up for soccer or baseball or swim lessons, or can I not? So some of that stuff you just have to keep asking until you find someone who gives you an answer that feels right, and that empowers you as a foster parent to make the right decision for the child. So.
Mm-hmm. Nice. It just seems like one of many challenges I'm sure you face as a foster parent. Could you speak more about those other challenges that you might face?
Sure. So there are challenges in the healthcare system. So children who are in foster care get state Medicaid, which is great. So all of their medical and mental health and dental needs should be taken care of, but finding a provider who will give them the services is very hard. So for example, when a child comes into your house, you're supposed to get a variety of things done right away. Have them get checked out, make sure they have all their shots, have a vision check, get their teeth checked. It can take 8 months or more to even get a dental appointment by a dentist who will accept your child's Medicaid. So you can't fulfill those needs for the child because of the challenges of the system. So that can be really hard. It can be hard to navigate what the agency wants you to do and doesn't want you to do in terms of a child. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of like, how are you going to educate the child? How are you going to socialize the child? How are you going to provide entertainment for the child? But then when it comes to how are they going to communicate with their family? How are they going to communicate with their extended family members? One of the children in our household has a lot of siblings. So how are we going to figure out how to maintain those relationships? We would really like the agency to help us. The agency says that's not a priority. The priority is with the parent. So then we as foster parents have to figure out, how do we communicate with and contact all of these other caregivers who have all of these other children to try to make sure that the siblings all continue to have some kind of bond. So that can be really challenging. Dealing with some health and mental health things that we hadn't had experience with before. We've learned a lot. And so that's been hard to have to seek out those resources on our own and figure out what's best. Including finding mental health providers that mesh well with the children and that meet their specific needs based on their trauma. So that can be difficult as well.
Mm-hmm. You were just talking about the relationships with the biological families.
Yeah.
What is your, as a foster parent, what is your dynamic like with trying to get in touch and with having the child's best interests? What is that like?
So often the agency will find ways to make contact between you and the biological parents. Sometimes they've instituted this fairly recently. They will have kind of sit-down meetings, so the foster parent can talk to the biological parent and get some of those questions, like what's their favorite food, what's their favorite color, what's their favorite television show, so they can help the child transition into the foster home more easily. That's a pretty new thing. So prior to that, it just kind of depended on the caseworker and what the caseworker wanted to do in terms of communication and contact between foster parent and biological family. Sometimes biological family are not safe, and so you can't have contact with them. And you have to do things to avoid the biological family knowing where you live or where the kids go to school, things like that. So, you have to be careful. One of the nice things about technology is we have things like Google Voice now, so I don't have to give biological family my phone number. I can give them my Google Voice number, and then I can send them pictures of their kid at their first day at school, right? I can send them pictures from vacation. I can send them a picture of them completing swim lessons. And I can help the family to stay connected to those milestones without worrying about my personal safety as much. So that comes in handy.
That's good. So after going through all of this and with all these challenges, but also like the benefits of everything, why have you fostered for so long and continue to do it?
Yeah. So it's funny, almost, except for our first placement, almost every placement that we've received has come when we are technically not available. So you can be on a vacancy list or a no vacancy list. So for example, when we adopted our daughter, we were on a no vacancy list because we wanted to give a time for our family just to kind of really bond. And while we were on that no vacancy list, we got a call from someone who said, I have this really great kid in my classroom who just went into foster care, and I think that they went far away, and I would really like this child to be able to continue at my school. Do you think maybe you could take him in? And we were like, well, we're technically not open, but we'll look into it. And so we ended up taking that child into our house. We were technically on no vacancy when we got a call about 2 girls who needed a place to live. And if we didn't take them, then they were going to get split up. And we're like, okay, we can't let them get split up. We're really only, we didn't have enough beds, so we needed to get another bed. And so then we took in 2. And so they've just kind of found us when they've needed us. And so we've continued to say yes to them. So.
I know that you recently adopted Jay.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
It's very exciting.
It is.
I know he went through a lot. And I remember you talking about how the system was kind of working against him. And what was that process like for you? It must have been hard to watch him go through it all.
Yeah, it was hard. So he lived with us for a while, and then he went back to live with family. And he lived in a lot of different places after he after he left our household. And, you know, some of them were better or safer than others. And it was hard not knowing if he was okay. That's a big thing with foster families, and a lot of foster families stop becoming foster families when they just get to a point where the not knowing is too hard, because you get attached to the kids, right? I mean, they're coming to your house and you're supposed to love them and give them the love and support that they need to grow and thrive, but then you have to give them back, and sometimes you have to give them back on really short notice, and that's really hard. And so with Jay, not knowing where he was or if he was okay was really hard. Now, I have to say that he was pretty fantastic. He memorized our phone numbers. He would call every now and again from whatever state he was living in and would let us know. Like, he wasn't really letting us know how he was. He would always call and say, hey, just checking up on you guys, see how you're doing. Which is not what I expected from a teenage boy. It was very nice, and it helped that a little bit. So when he called us and let us know that his family member was having a court date and he might be going into care again, could he come back and live with us? Again, we were on no vacancy, and we said, okay, I'll send your caseworker a note. And he was at our house 7:00 the next day. So, you know, it is wonderful when you do have the opportunity to continue to have contact with the kids, because not knowing is really hard.
Yeah. What was the decision like for your family and having Jay come back and then adopting him?
Yeah.
What was that conversation like?
Well, so before Jay came back to live with us, we did talk with our daughter. It's important that everyone in the household, if they're not completely on board, at least they understand the decision that's being made. And we were all on board with that decision, and that was great. Our daughter had grown close to him while he was a foster child with us the first time too. So she was also happy that he would be living here and we would know that he was okay. And again, whenever any child comes to live with you, you don't know how long they're going to be in your household. It could be a couple days or a couple weeks or forever, like it ended up being with Jay. For us, the adoption decision was kind of made for us because it became obvious at some point that he was not going to be able to go back and live with family, and that it probably wasn't going to be the best for him. And so at that point, we were all in. So we were going to fight for him. So we wanted to know what he wanted, and then we figured out what we could do to make that happen for him. And what he wanted was to live here forever. Well, maybe not in the house forever, but to live as part of the family forever. He did say the other day he was going to stay in his room until he was 37, and I said, I don't think that's quite right, but he can definitely come back and visit when he's 37.
You've talked a little bit about the relationship with your daughter and Jay.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me what it's like to witness that bond between them? Is it like siblings?
Mm-hmm.
What's the dynamic like?
Yeah, it's definitely siblings now. I think in the beginning with a lot of the kids, it's competition. They have often come from places of neglect, and resources were really hard to come by. So everything is a competition. So if somebody else comes into the house and mom and dad are going to love them, they're going to love me less because there's a finite amount of love, or there's a finite amount of food, or there's a finite amount of money. And it takes a long time for them to realize that that is not the case, that they're going to get more out of having a sibling, not less out of it. But it's hard. It's hard every time new kids come in because our kids kind of fall back into that, and the new kids are already coming with that competition for resources mindset. And so we just try to help them work through it. And now we are at a point where, with the exception of one of our former foster children who does not live in the state anymore, all of our former foster children all act like siblings. So they give one another a hard time. They, steal their stuff. They, just do all the things that siblings do. And it's really fun to see. Even kids who did not live in the same house together at the same time, but have, been at our house for Thanksgiving together or birthdays or whatever, they have developed that sibling bond as well, which is nice. Because really, what we say in foster parenting is every additional connection that a foster child can make can only benefit them. So, we're doing that through foster parenting. We're doing that by solidifying their relationships with teachers and counselors. But we're also doing that with this foster sibling group that they're getting to grow with. So.
Well, that's so sweet.
It is sweet.
It's really nice that they can come together like that.
Yeah. Well, and Jay has created a relationship with some of Heavenly's biological siblings too, because we get together with some of the other households frequently. So Jay has gotten to know Heavenly's sister and Heavenly's brother, who don't live in our house but live with other family members. So yeah, it's been cool.
That's really nice.
Yep. Do you mind if I take a drink?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I might take this to reload batteries.
Okay.
We'll need another clap.
Okay.
Another clap.
Yeah. I was just gonna certain things to kind of come up naturally.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I did focus, to
Next time.
so I apologize for that.
No, I know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we can.
Oh, is this light? We can just put the shade down.
We're gonna keep it up just to be consistent.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, because
that'd be
it's
fine.
going
We're
to keep.
a little wider than we usually are anyway, so we can just punch in a bit or close.
Okay.
And it'll match. It'll be fine.
Yeah. How does the 5D look?
Chrissy, how's it
It's
look?
good.
Still looks good.
Just the window's a little washy, but.
So is this one on ours. That's alright.
We have a lot of
We
windows.
learned from you.
It's nice in a house, but when you're filming around him.
Not so much. Yeah.
I mean, I will say, but is it
So
showing?
we might have to change it for the next interview a little bit, or
I
We
mean,
could adjust it for the next interview.
It keeps
Yeah, we can
reading
adjust
it
it
like
later.
2
Oh,
hours
you
when I
can
load
take
in new
this one
batteries.
now.
huh?
No, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Clapper? Question mark?
You want to say again?
Yeah, just
One
for the
music
love.
audio.
I don't know if I can do the two-handed like you do. It's really cool. Oh, sorry. I was
Alright.
saying, or one-handed, not two-handed.
Just- Trying to get back into the groove now.
Yeah, it's all right.
No, it's good.
We needed it.
Might jump around a little bit.
no, please do.
You've talked about the challenges you faced. I should say challenges, but like having to readjust when you come across like new behaviors in a child and
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah.
So what are some common behavioral traits that you see when a child comes in?
Common behavioral traits. So every child is different. Let's see. There are children who will get very afraid at an unexpected loud noise, or when you shout, "It's dinner time," loud enough so everyone in the house can hear. They will be triggered by a sound, a smell, a noise, something they see on TV that they weren't expecting. It can make them really quiet, or it can make them really angry. They can punch and hit and bite. They can go in their room and not come out. They can sleep all day. They can not sleep at all. Every child's reaction to their trauma and the world that they're currently living in is very different. And you have to kind of give them the space, and you have to have some skills to help get them through it. Some kids will hoard. So they'll put food under their pillows because they're worried that they're not going to have enough food because they didn't have enough food before. We had a child who slept in her clothes because she never knew when she was going to have to run. So she slept in her clothes and her shoes, and you couldn't make her not. So these are just things that take a lot of time. You got to work through them, and you have to know, you know what? So for this one child, I'm like, I am putting a granola bar under your pillowcase. You have a granola bar. It is right here. You don't need to go downstairs, get food, put it under your pillow. You have a granola bar. We need to be like, okay, you can sleep with your shoes on. You can sleep on the floor. You can do what you need to do in order to be comfortable enough to be able to function. And you just got to give them the space to do it. And as long as it isn't physically hurting them and it's not causing damage and it's not injuring anyone else, you just give them the space.
After seeing, like, I guess, both sides of, both extremes of being with children with all this trauma and everything, and how it can be difficult to manage, but also so rewarding, what would you say to someone who's on the fence about being a foster parent?
Yeah. So, think about what you have the capacity for as a human being. What can you take, right? So, and what do you have in terms of the space in your house, the resources that are available to you, and the time that you need to be able to advocate for and care for these children. And if you can, try it. It's not easy, but it is okay that it's not easy, and it's okay that you're not going to get it right. But what you're giving the child is infinitely better than what they had before. And it will be so much better than them having to go into a group home. A 10-year-old should never have to be in a group home. They should always have the opportunity to be in a family setting. And I think most children should. Yes, there are children, just like adults, who have behaviors that are incompatible with living in a traditional household. And those children should have the living situation that provides them with, more safety or more security or more services than a typical foster family can offer to them. But if they don't need to be in a group home or an institutional setting, they should not be. They should be in a home, and we just don't have enough homes.
You've already adopted some children and
Mm-hmm.
everything. Would you ever adopt more or change anything about some of the children that you fostered, like just wishing that you could have them?
Yeah. So I worry really hard on myself and not getting too attached. I want to make sure that the children know that I love them unconditionally, but I also know that kind of what my limit is in terms of, being able to give a child back. That's probably also one reason why I don't take in babies. I don't need that kind of attachment, the kind of attachment that a baby really needs in order to be able to thrive, knowing that I'd probably have to give it back. Would I change anything? I think for the majority of the children who have been through our house, they're in better places, whether they're with us or with someone else, than they were when we first met them. And that is a good outcome, and that makes me happy. If I didn't know that, I think it would be harder. And would I adopt more if we need to? I mean, it's always better if a child has a biological family member who is, a good, safe, stable, loving individual who they can live with, because there's just something about biology that adoption can't fill. And if they have that opportunity, I think that is great, and that's probably ideal. And if they don't have that opportunity, then we're available for them.
How do you stay involved in the system without fostering? We've talked a little bit about needing to take breaks and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do respite care for other families? How do you
Yeah.
stay around?
So we have done a little bit of respite. We don't have a very big house. We don't have a whole lot of beds. And so our beds have often been full. But we've done a little bit of respite. My husband and I are members of the Montgomery County Foster Parents Advisory Board. And so it's made up of licensed foster parents in Montgomery County, some of whom are adoptive families, some are foster families, and we work with Montgomery County Children's Services to improve the lives of the children who are in care and to help support the foster families who are providing that care. So there are lots of opportunities for us, even when we aren't actively fostering, to help impact foster children. And so, for example, we are right now working on an adoption event where we will work to get some of the 100+ children currently in Montgomery County who are in the permanent custody of the state but who do not have forever families, to try to get them connected with families who may be interested in adopting them so we can get them into good placements, some forever families. And so my husband and I do that a lot. It takes up a lot of time, but it's a good thing. I also run a foster parent resource group at the University of Dayton where I work, and that allows foster parents, kinship parents. We have a faculty member who is a court-appointed special advocate for foster children, allows all of us to get together and talk and figure out what is it that we need and how can we help one another or make changes. Recently, the University of Dayton has made changes to its family leave policy to help support foster parents, and that has been very helpful. And parents from this foster parent resource group have provided feedback on what some of those changes might be through the Women's Center on campus, and I think that they were able to help improve the policy. So there are lots of ways, and there are Facebook groups, there are support groups, there are lots of ways that you can stay connected with other foster families and see what their needs are, even if you don't currently have a child in your home.
Nice. Having all that support must really come in handy when having to deal with the system, and as it's often referred to as being a broken system.
Mm-hmm.
If you could wave a magic wand and fix it, what would that look like?
Major matter wand. So to go back to your earlier question about how long children are in the system, I really think 2 years is enough. They really need some stability. And so if we could find a way to ensure that after 2 years, children who are in foster care have a permanent place to live, that would be ideal. If we could have a system that partners with foster families more, that would be good. You know, foster parents are with these children every day, and we really know, like, what are their behaviors like after they visit their parents. That is important information that the system needs in order to determine what's going to make that child and that parent successful if reunification occurs. Foster parents really need to be partners, and often we are not. Sometimes we're seen as babysitters, and that's really difficult because the work that we do is difficult and it's meaningful, and the caseworker sees them once a month and we see them 24/7. So, yeah.
You've been through so much as just being a foster parent, it sounds like, and just having to go through the system and just getting attached to children and then having to let them go. How do you keep hope?
So my husband Kevin and I are really equal partners in this, as we are in everything. But for me, I wouldn't be able to do it unless I had someone like him in my life, because sometimes you need someone to vent to, or to problem solve with, or to cry with, or to just sit on the couch and watch Netflix after a really long day. And that is important to me. So seeing how he reacts in certain situations also, helps me to be hopeful about what we as foster parents can do for the children. And then also seeing the children and seeing what they can accomplish even after they leave our houses, that gives me hope. So we have a former foster child who is almost ready to go into college, and to know where she started from and to know that this is an option for her now is pretty phenomenal.
It must be so great to see, just like having a child be cared for and loved and seeing what it does to them.
Mm-hmm.
How does that make you feel?
It's wonderful. I mean, I'm very happy for all of our children to see what they're able to accomplish and to know how different their lives had been had they been stuck in the situations where they were, or even if they would still be alive today if they had remained where they were before they came into care of the state. So, the state really in my experience, takes kids from their families only when things are horrible. And so that's a really important thing for us to remember, is that what they came from was really sad and really hard, and that we can try to help be part of the solution in their lives going forward for however long they're going to be in our house for.
What has your favorite memory with your foster children been?
Gosh, there's so many favorite memories. Well, let me give you one that is, so both of our children who we adopted, Heavenly and Jay, we have this really fun photograph that just kind of keeps showing up, whether it's on our phones or we've got a couple of them printed around and we find it in a desk drawer. And it's just the two of them being silly in front of a campfire. For one of the children, it was their first campfire. And they're just being kids. Like, they're not worried about anything else. And that was just a really fun night to roast marshmallows and throw sticks on the fire and run around with the dogs. And yeah, that's a good one.
Nice. If you could say anything to parents or children or anyone watching this documentary, what would you say? Like, what is one thing you want people to know about the system?
Yeah. What did I say? One thing. So being a foster parent is hard, but seeing the outcomes that these children have after even just a short amount of time in your household is pretty phenomenal, and it's worth the trouble.
For all those foster children that are out there looking for hope, love, and support, what would you say to them?
So for older children, I would just encourage them to continue to advocate for themselves. It's hard for them to have a voice in the system, but most children receive either a court-appointed special advocate or a guardian ad litem. And be really honest with the individual. I hope they get a good one. Sometimes you just get what you get, but to really advocate for yourself. And for all of them, just to know that there really is a whole network of families who have never met them, don't know their situation, don't know their names, but who are out there and available for them. That they have these families have committed to helping children just like them go through whatever it is that they're going through, and that even if it seems hopeless, know that there are people who you don't even know who care about you.
That's wonderful. Great. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I gotta tell. It's okay.
So sorry. Did I?